everybody, welcome back. This is the second of my instalments on the PrimaTek colours from Daniel Smith. In my first instalment, which you can watch up there in the iCards now, these are the colours that I did then. They have now dried down, and I just want to make a little point that the Sujolite now dried down has got an almost pink iridescence as you roll it in the light, which I doubt the camera will do justice to, but you can just about make that out. It's a sparkly one, as are Kyanite and Amethyst. The others don't really have much sparkle, apart from probably Fuchsite, which is quite sparkly. The rest are not. They are really, really pretty colours. They don't mix with each other, and they're quite crap in that regard, but they have a beautiful, beautiful colour. And I think when you're painting with just single colours on their own, these are lovely colours to use. So the next set that I'm doing takes us through the reds and the neutrals through to black. So this is really the rest of them. And as always, I'm working on crap Aquafine student grade hot press paper, which is what I always use for swatching because it's crap and it shows paints at their worst, and I figure if they look good on this, they're going to look great on everything else. So I'm starting with bronzite, and I actually wear bronzite quite a lot. It's not a mineral per se, it's a stone, a beautiful, beautiful stone that, given the name, is obviously brown in colour, and the real thing has got a beautiful sparkle to it, especially when it's been polished. It's really gorgeous. Now this is not lifting terribly easily. Sometimes I think with colours like this, a bit of hot water probably would help a lot, but I'm going to use it as it is. Now it's described as transparent, non-staining, light fastness 1 and granulating, so I think it would have to be quite dilute for it to be transparent, so that's probably why it's not releasing terribly well. This is one of the worst actually of all the ones I've tried for getting it to release. So what I might do, if I remember, is at the end I'll come back to that and see if I can get a bit more out once it's had a chance to soak. Next is burnt bronzite, which will have just been made by heating bronzite, and that will oxidise the iron and give us more of a red, which is exactly what it's doing. And that is a granulating, transparent, non-staining, light fastness 1 paint. Note there's no pigment information given on any of these on here because they're all from natural pigments, most of which don't actually have colour index numbers ascribed to them. Most of the sort of like natural browns, for example, tend to be plant extracts. There are a few that do have them. I mean, you could argue that hematite is really a natural red iron oxide, so you could give it the appropriate colour, but I've just chosen not to because it doesn't help the reader in any way. Next up we have hematite burnt scarlet. So again, that's going to have been a heated hematite or a hematite that is naturally very, very red. This one's not terribly red. It's described as granulating, semi-transparent, low stainage, and light fastness 1, which of course this is the scale where 1 is excellent, 4 is bloody awful. So most minerals are going to be light fastness 1. Not a universal truth, but most of the time. It's a gorgeous colour. It's got a lovely granulation to it. I prefer hematite itself, but that's very pretty. Next we have garnet genuine. Now we've already kind of had a garnet in a way. Diopside looks a bit like very similar to green garnet, but isn't green garnet. Now this is a red garnet that they've used here. Garnets come in all colours, orange, red, green. I wear green a lot. Garnet is my birthstone, and I don't actually like the colour of most garnets. The red and the brown garnets, I tend to wear the green ones, which look a lot like diopside. Diopside is actually about half the price of green garnet. Green garnet is one of those quite rare minerals. So this is described as granulating, low stainage, transparent, and it is indeed a beautiful shade of red. I really like that. I mean, okay, there's a lot of chunks in there because it hasn't dispersed terribly easily from the swatch, but I like it. I think that'll be lovely on its own. I like how the hematite is granulating up now and giving itself texture, so we'll look at that again when we get to the end. We've done Fuchsite already, which, to remind you, was that sparkly bluish green. This is red Fuchsite next. If I can see it. got it. This is not lifting brilliantly, I have to say. It is described as granulating, transparent, non-staining, and light fastness 1, as always. I think it's got, yes, it has got the sparkle of standard fuchsite, which is nice, because that's probably the only thing that makes it distinct colour-wise from some of the other paints in the PrimaTek series. I'm doing this as a sort of relaxing bit of paint therapy before bed. Swatching is terribly relaxing. Minnesota Pipestone next, which is also known as Catlinite, which is a red mudstone. So I'm expecting this to be quite similar to some of the Wallace Seymour colours you can see up there, where they do various mudstones as well. This is obviously one local to Minnesota. A little tricky to wet. It's gradually lifting up for me now. And this is a granulating, staining, or granulating non-staining, semi-transparent, and again, light fastness 1. I'm not going to bother mentioning the light fastness actually from now on, because everything on this swatch card is light fastness 1. Very insipid. We'll see what it's like when it's dry. The next one is Sedona, which is named after a city in Arizona. I'm going to assume it's the red sandstone that's found around Sedona, as I'm not aware of a mineral formally named that. And indeed it looks like sandstone, and it's wetting very easily. It's described as granulating, semi-transparent, and not staining. My black patches I'm using here for transparency are, as always, just alcohol marker that's been allowed to dry thoroughly on the swatch card for about 20 minutes before I started, because if there's any alcohol there, the paint tends to repel. That's a really nice, rich, orangey colour. That would make a good alternative to burnt sienna, and I think could be a really interesting option. Piemontite I have used before. This is a gorgeous red-brown mineral, can be almost black. And this one is very, very deep, deep red. It's granulating, semi-transparent, and low staining. And I love this colour. I've used this in a few paintings. I've got the tubes of the PrimaTek set. I think they're really, really pretty. I'll go over now to the next row. This is Tiger's Eye Genuine, which is a type of quartz ultimately that contains asbestos fibres, and they give it that kind of fibrous, chatoyant look. It's usually an orange colour. If you heat it, you get something called oxeye, which is red, and there's another form of it which is called petersite or hawk's eye, which is blue. So I'm not expecting this to be terribly beautiful, because grinding it up, it doesn't look pretty, and indeed it's brown. It's described as granulating, transparent, and not staining. It looks very insipid, but the blob of paint has almost completely dissolved. There's just very low pigment, load or very low pigment strength in that paint. We'll see what that's like when dry, because it's hard to judge some of these when they're wet. Burnt Tiger's Eye is next, which I would expect to be like Hawkeye, which is a sort of red version. And indeed, it's much darker, much more red. I mean, if they're referring to Burnt Tiger's Eye as Tiger's Eye that they've heated, of course. Heat treating Tiger's Eye does give one a darker red Tiger's Eye. Sometimes it is sold as red Tiger's Eye, but Ox Eye is more correct. Hawk's Eye is the blue version, and strictly speaking, Petersite is very slightly different. That's more of a lavender blue, very, very rare, very expensive. I do have a couple of necklaces made of it. Hematite next. This should give us a really gorgeous reddish brown, and indeed it is. Oh no, sorry, black. This is a black hematite. I have used the hematite from Daniel Smith again from the PrimaTek tube set, and I really like it. I think it's a nice granulating black, and there aren't that many nice blacks around, so I quite liked it. And it's an interesting black because it's a heavily granulating, semi-transparent and low staining black, but it's also got a brown undertone to it. Reminds me of Mars Black in that regard. Next one is Hematite Violet Genuine here, which I'm assuming is going to be a little bit like a maybe a caput mortuum kind of colour. It's only a very subtle violet. But again, we'll come back to it once it's dried a little bit and let the granulation form. Next cab off the rank is what they refer to as mummy bauxite. Now, bauxite is an aluminium oxide that's usually got a lot of iron oxide mixed in with it, which gives it an orange colour. And the mummy in the name refers to, in the olden days, there were pigments called mummy pigments, and they were made from ground up Egyptian mummies, so they were sort of resins and mummy ground up, and they were a lovely brown. And so mummy is used as a prefix for all sorts of pigments, just to indicate now that they're that same kind of brown that's almost bloody. And that's where the original caput mortuum, of course, came from. It was death's head, it was ground up mummy. So nowadays we use iron oxides as caput mortuum, and indeed this is a bauxite containing iron oxides, which is similar to caput mortuum, but it's more orange. It's somewhere between caput mortuum and burnt sienna in tone. Next we have cyclorite genuine, bit of an unusual one. That it's not a mineral I'm overly familiar with. Otherwise, it's not lifting very easily, and it's a dark, very dark brown. This might be one that I have to let soak and come back to be very honest with you. While that does have a little soak, I'm just going to go back to that bronzite that I was messing with at the beginning, see if I can get a bit more pigment off of it. Yeah, I can. So the bronzite did benefit from a little bit of a soak. We'll have a look at that in a minute, and I'll try that with the cyclorite just now. Next we have bloodstone genuine. Now bloodstone is also known as heliotrope, but bloodstone sounds more exciting. Tends to be sort of greens and reds, greens with spots of reds, so I'm imagining it's going to be very dark. Yeah, black, absolutely jet black, really beautiful colour. Because obviously if you mix the green and the red components of bloodstone, you're going to get black. That's very pretty. It's granulating, transparent, and it doesn't stain. So that could be another pretty black option. And last but not least, we have black tourmaline. Tourmaline is often found inside quartz. You get tourmalinated quartz, just like you get rutilated quartz. And this would be a very jet black mineral usually. I've got several pieces of this. It's a really pretty colour. Bit hard to get it to lift, which is not surprising. It's quite hydrophobic mineral. And indeed it's granulating, and it's also transparent. And it does not stain. I'm just going to have another go at that cyclorite now it's had a moment to soak. Yeah, I think I've got some more paint this time. Okay. Let's have a little look at what we've got. So the bronzite, not much granulation there really, a little bit, and it's got a little bit of a yellowish undertone to it, which is quite interesting. The burnt bronzite I think is nicer because you've got a granulation of a sort of purple on top of an orange, which is quite an interesting texture, and not dissimilar to the hematite burnt scarlet, where you've clearly got a dark hematite on top of an orange background. I love the garnet genuine. I think that's a gorgeous colour, and I'll be interested to see how that mixes. The red fuchsite has got sparkle. None of the others on this page have got sparkle, but the red fuchsite has, but it's a very insipid pink otherwise. Minnesota pipestone, quite an insipid colour. I can't see a use for that for me. Sedona is a nice colour. I think that would make an alternative to burnt sienna. Piemontite is a kind of red with black and they separate as it granulates. I really like that. I think that's a very useful mix. Tiger's Eye I just found insipid, but the burnt Tiger's Eye I think again was quite interesting granulation of that black on top of the brown. The Hematite Genuine, one of the most beautiful granulating blacks you will ever find, with a slight hint of blue in this particular case. The Hematite Violet Genuine, you've got that sort of granulation on top of a reddish colour, so you get an interesting mix there. Mummy Bauxite, you've got a darker granulation on top of a yellow. The Cyclorite Genuine, not a lot I can say about that, it's just a plain, fairly matte brown. Bloodstone Genuine is a gorgeous, gorgeous, slightly purple black. And the black tourmaline is a quite neutral, if possibly slightly blue black, which I really like again. So that kind of concludes the PrimaTek series as far as the samples that I have on these. Sorry, that was me kicking something. The samples that I have on these spot cards of 230 odd colours go. I think they have released some more since then, and I will conclude those in future when I will revisit this series. So what I will do is complete this video now, and I will come back and do another video on these to show a little bit of mixing and how they behave with other colours, and show you some things I've done with them, as I kind of always do. I will be continuing instalments of the standard colours, which you will see building up over the next week or two. So all the sort of standard colours will come through, and all of the Marses and the Lunars I'm separating out because they're a little bit different. They've got stuff added to them and I want to separate them out. I'll also be doing the duochromes and the interference colours, the pearlescent colours, the iridescent colours separately as well, because they're quite different from the main series of paints. If you go to my website, there's a link down there. You'll find a blog post that's got a link to every video in it, so you don't have to dig around too much on YouTube to find them. That kind of concludes my look at the PrimaTeks. This is the sort of earthy palette of the PrimaTeks, which I think are really pretty. And then the more vibrant set of the PrimaTeks that I did last time, where you go red through to blue, red through to green, I should say. And I think some of those are absolutely gorgeous, particularly some of these greens. They're really fantastic. I really like that. I use these ones a lot. Sugalite, I think I'm going to have to get a tube of. I love the iridescence of that. The kyanite has sparkle, but the sugilite has iridescence. And as I wear sugilite a lot, I'm quite drawn to it as a mineral. I tend to wear it as a gemstone. It's very beautiful. I find the urge to want to paint with that. I don't know what the hell I would paint with that, apart from possibly snowy winter scenes, but I think I want to try it a bit more. Mayan blue I really like, and I love those greens. I'm so drawn to those greens. And I do like the sodalite. That dark grey is really beautiful. So thank you all very much. That concludes my look at the Daniel Smith PrimaTek series in terms of swatching. But I will see you in another video where I will actually use these a little bit. Thank you all very much, and good evening.